Welcome back, everybody. We're coming to you live from the land of legal marijuana, nerdy tabletop RPG companies, and of course, Miniature Dragon Comic Review. As always, I'm your host for the evening, Daniel Doc Gentry, and I am with, which all men attempt to be, except for that little part there. With me, as always, from Miniature Dragon is our illustrious gurus of all things comics, Alex and Woody. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey.
Good evening, Job.
As always, I'll be watching the chat and Twitch, as well as our Discord channel, our Facebook, and our Twitter as we go. All your comments can be live for what's going on. But welcome, everybody. Hey,
Hello.
Dr. Nick.
Hello, everybody. So, our first is Deadpool, correct?
That's right. So I was going to say, we only got a limited amount of time, so let's get starting. It's not just Deadpool. It's the Despicable Deadpool number 295 that we're doing today.
Which I think 295 is the biggest joke of the comic.
Yeah. So why don't you guys give me your feedback, and we'll go from there.
Well, Despicable Deadpool was the renaming of the series after the Secret Empire event that Marvel did recently, where they had Hydra Captain America taking over the United States, and Deadpool was on the side of Hydra Avengers. So, that's explains some of the reaction that the superheroes have to him in this story, where Colossus literally tells Deadpool to go F himself. And I think that pretty much sums up the tone for the book. What do you think, Alex?
So, my thoughts on it were, I enjoyed this book. It was definitely not like the normal Deadpool where you have the silly campiness, but you still had that fourth wall. Like one of the statements that he says to Colossus is, I preferred you in the movie version. When Colossus throws him through right up to a car.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this book. I thought it was really nicely done. I thought the story was interesting to see, this hardened killer actually care about somebody, and the reasons why he was doing things in the book actually had motivation.
Yeah, I agree with that. The thing about it, though, is like it's one of those stories where I don't think you can just pick it up in the middle of the comic series and know what's going on. This is one you might have to catch the trade or jump at the beginning of the story arc. And I think that if you were expecting the Ryan Reynolds Deadpool, like if you'd seen the movie and then you want to go into checking a Deadpool comic, this might not be the one, like a good transitionary book. I mean, it certainly takes a new side of the character. Spoilers, Deadpool has a kid in the comics, and he's trying to protect his kid who's being held over his head, and he's being made to do some pretty horrible stuff, hence the title. But it's definitely not the movie version of Deadpool. Not that the comics one is, but it's I don't think fans of Ryan Reynolds would enjoy this book as much.
Well, I definitely give it a Reynolds thumbs on up, for this.
A Reynolds rap.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I did not enjoy the book, unfortunately. It wasn't quite the way I would want to see Deadpool.
Now, what about the next book?
Well, let's finish this because we miss our main points, which is the art of this Deadpool. It's different than the art I'm used to from Deadpool. He just looked different, and I'm not saying it was bad or good. I actually haven't put my finger on if I have enjoyed it or not. What did you guys think about the different way they've been doing this Deadpool compared to old ones? Or his feet are properly proportioned. That's true.
I mean,
that's just horrible.
Proper musculature, and his eyes
and
are the right
pouches
size.
on top of pouches.
He has the right number of pouches. Seriously, I didn't really have a problem with the art. Most of the time, Marvel has really good quality talent. Sometimes they miss the mark, but it didn't bother me at all. Though I do think. The Shadowcat's reaction to Deadpool was a pretty little harsh. Impaling somebody because that he can heal from it's kind of a much.
But that's also kind of one of those things within comic books or even role-playing games where you got a character that heals. you might as well show the fact that they can actually heal.
No doubt. That's the only reason that Wolverine gets hurt is because I wasn't going to show off his powers. It's just like she took a core sample. But no, as far as the art goes, I think the art was fine. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was good.
Yeah, it's different. Like I said, it really just threw me off, not because I didn't think good or bad of it. It was just really weird to see Deadpool drawn a little differently when you threw this at me, and I was reading through it. You mentioned 295 being the joke. You want to explain that one a little bit? Or?
Well, I haven't double checked this, but I don't think the Deadpool series has been going on for that many issues. But I could be wrong. Deadpool's popular enough, but usually they throw a miniseries out at us, or they take it for a little while and then renumber it for a new number one. But they've been doing a thing lately where they're doing a thing called legacy numbering, where they'll take all of the comic, like they'll take every series that's ever been done with the character, add up the total issues, and that's the number that goes on the issue. So,
that's an interesting process.
Yeah, well, DC does it every once in a while, where they come back, they'll relaunch Action Comics and then do the legacy numbering. They've been doing it because they're heading towards issue 1000 of Action Comics and Detective Comics. So it's like it's let's go. It's a big event. It'll be something or not. But
before I switch, we got a couple of people in chat saying hello, hi everybody, thank you for joining us.
Hey.
Hi, internet peoples.
One of the people from my podcast said something he finds funny, but it's slightly inappropriate, so I'm not going to say it. And please, I'm trying to get this one for kids, you Keith, you jerk. But yeah, let's switch over to XO Manowar number 12. Okay,
so for anyone who doesn't know, XO Manowar is basically Valiant Comics' version of Iron Man, if he was as powerful as Thor. It's an alien battlesuit that ended up in the possession of a barbarian from the Visigoth days, who was fighting the Romans. Long story short, he gets trapped in space due to time dilation. 2,000 years go by for him, but not for us, but not for him. He gets the suit, comes back to Earth, and now you got this guy that's completely in a different time period, living in our modern day, and is having a trouble fitting in. And in the new series, apparently he's decided to peace out on Earth because he got tired of war and went to an alien planet to live. And it was interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. I've never been a huge fan of XO Manowar. I read the first graphic novel, didn't quite suck me in enough to keep reading. Though the story was well executed, I thought. But I will say the character of Ninjak kind of ruined it for me. But that's probably what tipped the balance against the book for me, was that guest star. But if that means anything. But in the series, the comic itself doesn't really have enough context clues to know what's going on. But if you read the first page, which gives you kind of the blow by blow of the characters in the story, you pretty much know what's going on. And when I got done reading that issue, I was like, damn, that was a good book. And I immediately went out and bought the first trade in that art to find out what led up to that point. And I'm definitely going to keep reading. I really enjoyed it. Alex, what was your reaction?
I felt like it would have been much more entertainment for me if it was like an animated series. I could have seen it as like something that Valiant could have done as a animated series during, the early 2000s. The art style wasn't bad at all. I really enjoyed it. I thought it had a very sci-fi kind of feel, like almost some of like the French comics that you would do in say heavy metal or various other publications. Right. It didn't suck me in as story went, but it looked pretty.
Yeah, and I absolutely loved it.
I found it interesting when I started this was how to put this. It was weird to be in the middle of that. It's like this dead spot in the story, and I don't know enough about it from before. I will say that whoever was the writer was of this was really good, because it really intrigued me to see what happens next, even though it's the middle of the story. I thought, again, like some of the stuff we talk about, the art here is different. I'm not saying bad or good. Again, you guys are throwing things at me like I'm like, now that's different than what I've seen. It's different art style than I've seen a lot of comic books written. But it didn't change the fact that I enjoyed the illustration, the way it was done. I really did enjoy it, but I just couldn't put my finger on what was different than like other comic book styles.
Well, it something to bear in mind also is that like you've got Marvel and DC are the number 1 and 2 spots, and they usually take turns going back and forth, kind of like Coke and Pepsi. And though Marvel tends to hold up, but it was traditionally, historically, does better than DC. But then the number 3 and 4 slots kind of alternate between Valiant Comics and Image Comics. And so what basically happens is all the A-list creators get gobbled up by the top 2, which accounts for like 120 books on the out on the shelves, something like that. Yeah, it's like a ridiculous amount. So like that's an artist for every book, right? So everybody else basically works for those 2 guys on their day off, or is just the people that aren't quite up to that, the top spots yet, or maybe people get cycled out and they go down. But whatever the case is like the people that aren't working on the top tier books are the ones that are going to be working on those books. So there is going to be a slight difference in style, and also companies kind of sometimes want something to like set themselves apart. Like they don't necessarily want to look exactly like a Marvel and DC book. So they'll say, let's do the colors different. In fact, you might want to see the first trade in this art, because the art was just literally looked like a painting. It was staggering. It actually was very similar to this Conan book that Alex and I checked out a while back, that Dark Horse did. And I was like, oh my God, why can't they keep that guy?
Speaking of pretty pictures and art, let's take it to our featured presentation here, Descenders. This, by the way, Woody, it blew me away. I'll talk about it when I'm done, but you guys do your thing. Again, you got a little bit longer. This one take a little bit of time, but tell me what you thought.
Well, okay, so Descender is one of the Image books that came out, and it's completely like nothing you've ever seen. The whole thing is watercolored. You can actually see the texture marks on the pages from the work they did, and it's a sci-fi story about this little android is a child who's like his purpose is to basically be a companion to a kid, and then there's some disaster that happens, and I don't want to ruin the plot necessarily on that regard, but he gets abandoned at a mining station and wakes up like I think 20 years later or something, or 10 years later.
10 years later.
And 10 years later, and he's all alone, but his code is the secret to the mystery of the book. But it's like it's weird to read because the art style doesn't really match the subject matter, but at the same time it's so
I think it gives it a much more human feel, with it being a hard sci-fi kind of book, but because you have the soft way that watercolors are, I wouldn't say mutes it, but it really makes it much more approachable. Like it doesn't have that like Star Wars is a really, like the core part of Star Wars is basically a rusted, everything's falling apart, slam the council down and maybe the Millennium Falcon will work, or it might crap out. But and it isn't so plasticky, or like everything's polished like Star Trek, where everything's nice and shiny and beautiful and new. But this is
Star Wars is lived in.
Yeah. And this definitely has like that almost lived in, that almost very soft human kind of feel to it.
Well, I actually want to rebut that, because I was thinking about this as you were saying that, like, see this particular our story, it's definitely a human interest kind of story, and it's one that kind of like Saga, where it's very easy to relate to, and it's one of those stories where there's some adult subject matter, but you could share the story with your kid, right? But what I find interesting about it is that if we had a regular artist, like say the artist from X-Men Manowar, right, I don't think the book might have found its audience. Like there's not enough unique about the story where it would have necessarily stood out, even though it's a fantastic book and you should absolutely be reading it. But I don't think it would have stood out. But having such a unique art style that is like nothing else in the industry, because there's no book I've ever seen that looks like this. I think that is really what gives it the opportunity to stand out and find its audience, which it certainly deserves. But I think it's because it's so unique looking is the reason why the book is still going and why it's done as well, and why it stands out. Doc, you had a thought about that?
So for me, it's all about creativity. I love nerd endeavors, especially when they're new. And I'm not saying this is new. What I'm saying is it was new to me. So you told me, you even started it. You prefaced it with, "I know you're gonna like this one," and you never do that. And so I picked it up and I started reading it, and I'll agree, there's nothing super unique about the storyline. There's different plot points that are different, but it doesn't, like, I can think of other stories that are very similar to this.
Yeah.
The watercolor blew me away. It really did. It was amazing. It drew me into it even more. You mentioned like Saga and you know, probably because that's the one that I read most often. But this was like incredible. And I pulled some of the pages out, like the one that you're seeing now, where it's just the blue watercolor of the internal of the Tim unit with the red outline. And I was like, how else could you have got that out there? That light blue.
Yeah.
And then, you know, just vibrant colors. It was amazing. And the storyline is, like I said, not unique. It's a mixture of other storylines, but the plot points in it really kept me going.
I think it's well executed. Like a story doesn't have to be unique, but it does have to be well executed.
I agree. I don't know if this was done by a regular artist. I don't think it would have. If it was regular art, regular penciling, regular colors, I can't say that I wouldn't have read it. I don't think I would have had the same experience, which I think is important here. And I did have a wonderful experience with this. This is definitely something that the more they do, the more I'm going to pick up. This is probably one of the few that I will also love to have on my bookshelf, which is saying something because my bookshelf is filled with a bunch of other stuff. So
yeah.
Alex, you were talking about it. Like, do you think it would have changed it much if there was a regular artist involved than the watercolor that they used?
Oh, absolutely. As I definitely do feel like stories definitely do change in the overall compass of how it looks. I mean, I grew up with a lot of stuff from BBC and like public access kind of stuff is what I got used to watching. So I can give a certain level of, Red Dwarf, Doctor Who, and various other, like the original series where it was very much of, you could almost see the wires or like the seams on the Monster of the Week. And so it's like, story-wise, I do agree. It was very weak, but I think it draws you in because it's that uniqueness. It's that style. It's that voice that it has. It's such a unique voice because the majority of artists don't do that. I mean, it's kind of like Alex Ross. You know, his work is so beautiful because it has that photorealistic when you have, you know, these guys in spandex. You know, he does great DC titles, you know, that at the end of the day, these are campy looking individuals because who wears their underwear on the outside? Granted, wrestlers from a previous generation ago, but still, you know, his art is amazing. And it's the same way with this. You know, it's so different. It's so unique. I think, once again, like you nailed it, Doc. If this was done by the guy that did XO or, you know, any other title, it wouldn't be the same.
Like Deadpool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say that I wouldn't say the story is weak. I certainly wouldn't say that. But at the same time, I think that.
But there's stronger sci-fi.
There is, absolutely. But because I think this story was written to be shared with your family, which means that there's certain hard edges you don't hit. But the thing is like in a comic book medium, the visual storytelling is half of the presentation, and they picked the right art like this is the right medium to tell this story because it needed something to make it stand out, make it exceptional, and make it something that you have to pay attention to, and they definitely found that the right artist and the right medium to tell this story the right way, and clearly it is because we're talking about it and people are reading it, and you know Doc wants to keep reading, so they did it right, and so you know
Well,
that's the other half of the story.
As a storyteller, it's the RPG in me. When I start a story, I want to give people the elements where they're like, "Oh, I know what this is," because he's done it 100 times, and I could see where they could take this story and turn it and really just catch everybody off guard if they wanted to.
And they do that repeatedly.
There were a couple times like I definitely didn't guess right. I really didn't see where it was coming from. But you were talking about language earlier, and part of what I wanted to hit on was a particular character in this comic, Driller.
Oh yes, Driller.
Every time he said human, it was HRRRR men.
Herman, yeah.
And I loved whoever did that because I could hear the mechanical zzz, which is what I think they were going for on that, which was amazing. And they've done it with other things in this comic too, but I wanted to pick that one out because that one was the one most out there.
Well, that's actually an aspect I find very interesting. Is like you basically have, as the story evolves, and you are going to basically find that this definitely has your Battlestar Galactica kind of scenario where the machines became sentient, and they saw themselves as slaves, and they decided that wasn't cool. And this does kind of get to an interesting topic of like the advance of technology recklessly, and not having responsibility for what you're creating, and realizing where things are going with what you're creating. And that's certainly a relevant issue for us today. And we have plenty of fiction right now where, be it Dune or Battlestar Galactica or other things where it's like, this creating a sentient slave race, and they rise up against us, and nobody really seems to be getting that message. And the only message they get is one from Star Wars, where the solution is to simply enslave them harder, and then it's fine. And it's like, no, you guys are getting the wrong message. And I hope that this kind of fiction continues, and people pay attention, because it's something I'm concerned about. I don't want a defense computer deciding that I'm irrelevant one day. Terminator, there's another good example, a classic example.
We've noticed with ORs, operating rooms, that we move towards this laser robot technology, and it still does not. There's no way to program the human element, the gut feeling, the processes that the brain has, that has a way of just feeling that something's going to happen. And I love that was introduced into this as well. There is this definite element of humans and robots and AI, and then at a certain point, I'm not going to blow it because it's really unique, but there's a combination. It's one of those things that I was looking at was like, one can't replace the other can't replace the one, and I really hope that they take that part of the story and move that forward, because I really love that little intricate detail of Tim's the main character, no doubt, in this, and Tim has like a bunch of unique things, but I think it's interesting that even Tim's trying to figure it out still, and I love that.
Yeah, well, in response to that, I've read. I think there's 5 trades out right now. I've read 4 of the 5, and I hadn't realized I got that far behind. But they do really get into it, and that aspect you're talking about, and like, and one thing I like is actually like, it's like in the X-Files ended, and like Lost, they didn't give us a damn thing. It's like, we'll give you all the answers. Well, screw you because you didn't. But apparently in the 5th graphic novel, the major mystery of the book is actually going to be explored, and to explore it that early, I mean, there's lots of other things to go into, but it's like there's actually the big mystery of the book is promised in the next graphic novel, which I'm about to pick up, and it's like that. I like that. They're not dragging out the big answers, the big mystery at the beginning to the end. It's going to be answered in the middle, and then there'll be another mystery to keep the story going. It's like you should have something to keep people going, and then create more engagement to keep them go past that point. But if you drag the big thing out to the very end, sometimes people get tired and drop the book. Like there's a series called Low that I was reading, which I said screw that book, because they not only did they save the big reveal to the very, like, they're saving it to the very end of the series, the thing that actually got you to want to read it, but they they destroyed it in the middle of the series, and then and then they're like, hey, isn't that great? And they dropped the plot line and moved on to something else. And it's like, it's just one tragedy after another. It's like, screw you all, I'm not reading your book, this isn't what I signed on for.
No, and but you hit something that's kind of important. It has to organically come out. You can't say, at this issue is when I'm going to bring this out. You really need to let your story play out, and where it organically would come forward, whatever that mystery is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You let it be known, but it doesn't change the fact that whatever that mystery is, these things that are in place are not, they're still moving.
Oh, yeah. And they actually set the story up as it goes almost immediately for that organic development. And that's actually one thing that, I say is where I was saying, like, the book is well executed, because the characters are intricately connected to the plot. They have a reason to be part of it. And all these characters, like Tim, the main character Tim, the little boy android. I mean, he is. Without him, you wouldn't have this story. There would be a completely different story, and it would probably be just a classic military engagement. Like, oh my God, our Galactic Federations came under assault. We're reeling from it. We're fractured, and we have to fight back and destroy this enemy to survive. Because of him, you have a deeper, more personal story. And as I said earlier, I think it's something that kids would enjoy and could potentially even relate to. And it's I think possibly because he's to a degree a point of view character, the simplicity of the storytelling reflects the mindset of this character, who is basically our point of view for the story. And it's like each time you get into I think it's like each time you look at a different character's point of view in the story, the tone of the story changes and then it becomes more mature. And when you're dealing with Tim, it obviously is simpler and more, more from his perspective. And again, this would be a great book to share with your kids. There's a few mature things. Obviously, parents should have judgment. But like, it's really, I think it'd be a great story to read to your kids.
Yeah, and as far as the story goes, there's so many little things that made me go, I see where you did there. Yeah. And as they get them, you're like, that can't be the big mystery. This is book 2 or book 1 or whatever. And you're like, it hits it. Yeah, but that's not all. Here's this other part of this that I didn't say. And it was organic. Yeah. It was definitely meant to be that way. And it was really interesting. So, I mean, we'll get to our final thoughts. One of our listeners, Daniel, wrote that he loves Deadpool, legitimately his favorite comic book character. And Dan, if you're listening, and feel free to do this, my question would be, is it your favorite because of the movies, or is it your favorite because of the comics? I always love that question because it is. But okay, gentlemen, final thoughts on today. We'll start with Alex. All
right. Well, Deadpool, I'm going to give 2 little baby thumbs up because they look huge that way.
No.
With XO, I give it half of an X out of an XO because I didn't really hit me that much. And then the last one is, it's a gallery of paintings worth of stars, like a sea of stars. My God, it's full of stars.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm going to have to reverse it because I did not enjoy the Deadpool comic at all, so I would actually give it 2 thumbs down, but I think it might have been more fun if I would not recommend it as your starting point for Deadpool. With Exo Manowar, I would give that thing 2 thumbs up, 2 big thumbs up, actually, and, totally go back to it's only issue 12. Go pick up the first trade and read that sucker, man. It gets a great start. And with Descender, I mean, I'm buying the next book, so there's my rating. That's an excellent story, and I would recommend it to anyone, which I think I've done 5 times so far.
I can tell you right now, the Deadpool. I've read other Deadpool comics. I'm not relating to the movie. I'm not a fan of this Deadpool. I like a little bit of the elements that they added into it, but I don't like what they're doing. And it doesn't feel like Deadpool. And whether you like Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool or comic, this is a totally different Deadpool personality. And I'm not saying I wouldn't enjoy it. I'm just saying compared to the other ones, I'm not a fan. I like the other ones. I like the original ones better. But I also like the crossovers that Marvel did, like the Harley Quinn ones and stuff, which, we should do in the future. Yeah. XO, the art in Deadpool, though, I'm not saying it's 100% worth it, but it's decent. So, I mean, if you're more of an art collector than you are a story collector when it comes to comic books, obviously look at that. EXO, if you're into art, I liked it. It didn't blow me away like other comics have, including Descender, but it was a very unique style. I wasn't used to it. I haven't seen it before. And again, I'm the baby here. I'm not the expert in comic books. I read them when I was younger, but I didn't read them with the understanding of what art, penciling, all the other stuff that you should. I read them because I wanted to know what happened next with my superheroes. But the drawing here is unique. The cover actually is different than the rest of the drawings, and I think that the different races are definitely discernible because the artist really went out of their way to make two human-like races seem very similar to each other, which I thought was incredible as well. Descender, I cannot give it enough praise. The story is enough. Like I said, the little stuff. It's not unique. If you're looking for a story to blow you away, this will have little parts where it might hit you and you'll be like, but it's not one of those stories that you're going to read it and blow you away. But again, like Woody was saying, I think it's more because it's kid friendly, and I loved it about that. The art, though, is amazing, and it did blow me away. It's one of the few comics that I could ever say do that. Thank you guys for your final thoughts. You guys got anything new, or is it just the ConwayTheSeries.com and CounterMay.com?
Well, just, we have new pages coming out on Tuesday for those comics. So I think Conway might be, or Cybersemiosis might be a couple days late. We had a little bit of a snafu because it looks like one of our colorists got married and didn't tell me. So, so our latest page might be a little bit late. I'm not sure. I haven't heard from him, but there's a wedding photo on his Facebook. So I'm thinking, okay, he probably got married.
So when you talk about the pages, is that the one that on Patreon you redo it one page at a time for your supporters, or?
Well, what it is like we have the newest pages coming out, and so those are coming out each week. And depending upon people's life, sometimes I'm not able to have pages done in advance, and so. But like I'm a couple pages ahead on my Cyberpunk book. It's just my flatter got delayed, and because of the craziness from Emerald City Comic Con, I didn't catch it in time. So I'm having to do my fallback plan. So we'll do our best.
Hey, we support them by going out to ConwayTheSeries.com, checking out the work there, CounterMay.com.
Yeah,
sorry.
But my other 3 books will be out on time. So, which is we have the Thunderfrog comic series will definitely be out.
I don't think you guys put enough out. We should have one more book on top of there. But anyways, you could follow us on our Discord channel again.
I actually have 4 books out.
You can follow us on our Discord channel. The Discord is below. It's open link all the time. You can join there. I'll put different, as we do comic books, we'll open it up for discussion. I'd like to hear what you guys think. Just because you can't get it now, you might hear this later and have something to add to it. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at MD Reviewcast, or email us at mdreviewcast@gmail.com. As always, read more comics, keep it nerdy, and live your dreams.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.